So most humans over time are becoming B12 deficient and are going to need a supplement. So nutritional yeast is a great way to get that B12. And there's no harm in also taking a supplement, which most of people have to do, including myself.
Yeah, likewise. Typically take a multivitamin. I take algae oil for my omega-3s, and then I take a vitamin D supplement as well. But that I take again regardless, just because I live in a place with very little sunlight.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of my podcast, Seeking Voices of Healing, Health, and Hope. Today, I had the benefit of speaking to Mr. Akash Vaghela. He is a London-based author, entrepreneur, and fitness coach. He has over 12 years of experience in the health and fitness industry. And in 2017, he started this really cool company called R&T Fitness. And what he does in this company, it's an online body transformation program for high performance people who are high performers who are looking to really work on improving their fitness. But what I like about him in particular is that he focuses not only on the exercise, but he focuses on spirituality, nutrition, mind-body work. He has had a big vision. He's written a book that is called Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life, which is available on Amazon. He has been featured in Men's Health, the Daily Telegraph, the BBC. He has a fitness radio podcast, and just a really cool, really interesting person to talk to. Different than some of my other podcasts in the sense that we talked a lot more about fitness, and it was neat to hear sort of his perspective on plant-based nutrition and fitness. Look forward to hearing your opinions and your thoughts. Hi there. This is Dr. Monica Agarwal here with Mr. Akash Vaghela, and the owner of R&T Fitness. I'm so excited to have you here today and have so many interesting questions to talk to you about. So as you know, I am a physician and I work with plant-based nutrition and I try to work in heart disease. And I was interested in you in particular because I think that you're doing a lot of nutrition and fitness. So you're bridging the gap for so many people who are trying to get healthy. And often people who are trying to get healthy or trying to look good and lose weight, they sort of focus on, well, it's the exercise, but I like that you bridge both nutrition and fitness. Maybe you can start by telling us, so thank you for being here. I appreciate that. And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do and how you got started.
Sure, yeah. So growing up, I always wanted to follow my father's footsteps in becoming a lawyer. So everything I did was geared towards a law degree, my subject choices, my work experience. And then around the age of 16, 17, one of my best friends kept saying to me, hey, why don't you come to the gym with me? And I thought, nah, why waste your time doing that? But as a skinny fat kid with boobs and a pot belly, I lacked confidence. And at the time I was struggling in my dating endeavors as a young teenager. And he said to me, look, it's going to help you in that department. And I said, all right, great, let me come along. And what ended up happening and transpiring was something I never imagined, in that going through a physical transformation allowed me to develop a level of focus, control, and confidence I never thought was possible. And during that same period of time, I became completely obsessed with learning everything there was to do with fitness, nutrition, body composition, and lifestyle optimization. And at the same time, I was preparing my application for law. And it was during a careers class when I was supposed to be writing and confirming my personal statement for my law application, when instead I decided to spend the whole hour reading nutrition articles. And the same best friend said to me, Akash, why don't you just do something in this field? And this was 2008, 2009. And at the time, I didn't really think there was a career to be had in fitness, but I did some research and I came across something called sport and exercise science. And I thought this university degree looks right on the money, right exactly what I want to do. So I made the decision pretty much overnight, which I still look back and think, what prompted me to just take a road that none of my peers or friends were doing. But I made an overnight decision to do this. I told my parents, and their response initially was, how are you going to pay the bills? Coming from a South Asian background like yourself, you're either doing medicine, law, or finance, and doing something like sport exercise science, they just thought it was doing star jumps in a field as a PE teacher. And I said, I don't know, but I'm going to make it work. And once they saw it was a science degree, they were really bought in, and now they're my biggest supporters. But at the time, it was very different for the community. But anyway, I went off to university. I continued to experiment with myself, and I started helping my friends at university and experimenting a bunch of different ideas. And they became my guinea pigs in the early days. As I left university, and I became a personal trainer in the city. So I worked in the city of London, working with high performing, busy professionals, executives, and helping them get into the best shape of their life and really transforming their body from inside and out. And then it got to around 2016, and I started seeing my colleagues who are personal trainers having kids. And being a personal trainer is a very unsociable lifestyle. You're out in the house at 5 a.m, you're back home at 10 p.m, and you're very governed by a client schedule. So I started seeing them having kids, and they weren't seeing them very often, except for on Sundays, because you work Monday to Saturday as a personal trainer. And I thought, I don't know if I want that for my lifestyle in the future. I still want to be in the health and fitness field, because for me, when I first discovered the power of the physical transformation to be a vehicle to do things you never thought possible, for me, that I knew I'd found my purpose in life, and I wanted to spread that with other people in the world. So I didn't want to leave the field, but I wanted to find a more sustainable way to do so, but also a way where I could spread the power of what I was doing as well. I'd always had an entrepreneurial itch, but never found what that thing was for me until I started seeing all these colleagues having kids. So I hatched the plan for RNT Fitness, which was effectively a platform online, fully online based, where busy professionals, high performing individuals can come and experience a life-changing transformation mentally and physically, where they use the physical transformation as a vehicle to improve their confidence, their energy, their relationships, their career, the whole holistic approach. And since launching in May 2017, we've helped transform over 3,000 lives in 25 different countries using a unique and proven 5-phase methodology that we've built. I've written a book called Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life. And I've really crystallized the methodology around what we do, because like you said, I think we were talking off air around bridging the gap between fitness and nutrition. I like to think what we've done with RNT Fitness is exactly that, and give people a blueprint where they have training, nutrition, mindset, and lifestyle all in one. So they have what they need to get in shape, but most importantly, build a sustainable lifestyle solution to stay in shape year round. So they don't have to go through the dieting, the yo-yoing that many people suffer from.
So thank you. I love that. That was so great. So what I see a lot in my patients is that people come to me because they want to lose weight, or, as a cardiologist, I see a lot of patients, of course, that have heart disease, but then there's this group of people that say, well, I really am just I want to lose weight. And that's their main focus. And so and then there's all these people that come in and ask me, well, what's the right diet and what's the optimal diet? And as you may know, that I believe in a plant-forward diet. So that means that eating mostly plants is the optimal diet. And ideally, I think that everybody should go plant-based. And there's and I know that you feel the same way. And I think that the studies overall have shown, in our guidelines in cardiology, have shown that eating a plant-forward diet, pretty much a plant-based diet, is the optimal diet. So we've actually incorporated that into our prevention guidelines for heart disease, which is amazing. I mean, there's a little bit of fish in the guidelines, and there's some reasons for that are political, but we overall say that the premise for a good diet is plant-based. And so I think it's really important that you incorporate those nutrition ideals into your fitness routine. How do people, when you're seeing them, how do they think about, and I know that, how do you approach nutrition with your clients, and how do you sort of emphasize more plants in the diet? And what do you see as struggles, and what do people sort of push back on?
Okay, where would you like me to start on that? I'll go with the nutrition setup. So most people come to us personally to improve their body composition. They've tried multiple things in the past, and they want to find something that works for them. Their biggest objection and blockers tend to be, how do I fit this with my lifestyle? Do I need to make massive shifts? I don't have time for this. I still want to eat out and drink alcohol. All these are the most common objections for people wanting to live a healthier lifestyle. The way I like to approach nutrition is quite simple. Without going into sort of calorie and macros, specifically, you ultimately need if you're going to lose weight, you ultimately need a calorie deficit. But we all know that, right? The devil's in the details and the application of that. So what I found to really help, especially sort of the general population, but also busy physicians that we work with as well, is some form of meal preparation strategy. I think whether that's a daily basis, twice a week, weekly basis, whatever your meal preparation strategy is, I think that's very important. I think the second part is a set meal plan approach to begin with, because I think we're inundated with decisions on a day-to-day basis, and we have only so much willpower and quality decision-making ability on a daily basis. So if we can limit that decision fatigue by following a set meal plan, it can help take a lot of thinking out of nutrition. So you don't have to think, should I have tofu or tempeh for dinner? Should I have broccoli or cauliflower? Should I have rice or sweet potato? Now, we of course know that we need a variety in our diet, which we can cover through rotation. But if you have a meal preparation strategy coupled with a set meal plan approach, I find for a lot of busy, time-strapped professionals, it takes a lot of thinking out and allows them to execute, which is ultimately the hardest thing. Once you build that foundation, you build the habits through something very consistent, then you can introduce more variety. And I find variety is a lot easier when you have the habits in place, you have the foundation in place, and also you have the education in place, because a lot of us don't have the decision-making ability on the fly or on the go to be able to make good choices. So to have something set in stone to begin with can make that process a lot easier, takes a lot of thinking out. And as they're learning on the journey, they can start thinking, oh, I didn't realize that this has this much protein or this has this much fat. And then they can make better choices. So that's the general way I like to start the application of a nutrition once you've designed your numbers and all of that. Because I find it's a very good way to integrate it into your day-to-day. And then with regards to your question,
I like that term, decision fatigue. Taking the thinking out of sort of the day-to-day and having a rotation. I certainly know in my own life that if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat worse food. And I know that because you're just eager to fill the tummy. And sort of when you have it all planned out ahead of time, and I'm obsessed with my Instapot. And so I use my Instapot, which is just an electric pressure cooker, to start my meals. And sometimes at 8 a.m. I'm making my dinner so that when I walk in the door, everybody has food. And I think that that's so nice to have that plan. So you're not always constantly thinking, what should I eat?
Exactly. And then when it comes to incorporating a lot of plants into your diet, I think whether you're plant-based or not, in terms of vegan or not, I think the majority of your diet should be plant-based anyway. It could be plant-based with a bit of fish, like you said, or a bit of chicken or a bit of meat or fish. But, in an ideal world, I'm like you, I think everyone should be completely plant-based. But I think even if you do eat meat and fish, the best approach, and I think it's very research-driven as well, is a majority plant-based diet where you have lots of vegetables, legumes, good quality starchy carbohydrates, proteins. And I think that approach can apply to anyone, whether you make the choice to eat meat, fish, and dairy. I think you should have a plant-based foundation at the core.
That's great. And that's exactly right, and that's why I like that term, plant forward. At the end of the day, you have to start with plants. There's no other way. It has to be the foundation. Do you find that people struggle with, because some of the times when some of my patients, especially performance athletes, and I see a lot of performance athletes, when they first start going plant-based, they find that they lose a lot of weight and they struggle with keeping their weight up when they're plant-based. And some people are concerned that are plant-based that they can't build muscle. How do you respond to those kind of things?
So I can empathize because I used to be there. My own story with plant-based nutrition is I used to eat a kilo of meat a day. And I did that for many, many years because I thought that was the bodybuilding way and the way to build muscle, get strong, get lean, and pursue all your body composition goals. And then something around 2018.
So you ate a ketogenic diet?
No, a kilo of meat a day.
Oh, a kilo of meat. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was crazy on the spectrum where I was ordering a kilo of meat, kilos of meat, and I bought a freezer just for this. So I was on the really far end spectrum of I need to consume loads of meat to build muscle, to get lean. And then it got to around 2018, and for productivity reasons, I wanted to find ways to eat less in the day. As in, instead of eating 6 times a day, I was like, I can't keep doing this. So I reduced my meal frequency to 3. And as a result, I started eating less meat. Then it got to about 2019, 2020, and I started thinking to myself, I don't think eating meat is for me. And I started thinking more consciously. I started thinking more about the ethics and the environmental reasons for this. And I thought, this doesn't feel like a sustainable way to keep going. But my biggest hindrance and blocker for me going fully plant-based was my fitness results. I thought, if I give this up, I'm going to lose muscle mass. I'm not going to get stronger anymore. I won't be able to get lean. And that went on for about 2 years until the middle of 2021. And bear in mind, in this period of time, I'd helped a lot of vegans get into incredible shape. But I just thought for myself, it's different, right? And then it got to about middle of 2021, and I was on my mini moon with my wife, and we were in this like really cool long hike in the nature, and I was just watching it all go by, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. And my wife was like, you've been talking about this since you started dating 3 years ago. When are you going to actually just pull the trigger? And the following week, I dropped meat and fish, but I still hung on to eggs and dairy. This was August 2021. And then at the end of the year, I thought, how do I prove to myself that this is possible? So with a bodybuilding background, for me, bodybuilding is the extreme of body composition, right? You push yourself for muscle growth and you push yourself to extremes of fat loss, which, the general population doesn't need to go to. But I always think if I go to the extremes and I have those covered, I can help empathize along that entire spectrum. So I decided to get absolutely shredded. For those who don't know, it's like single digit body fat, very, very low. And for me, to the extreme of having, you can see the fibers on my glutes, like very, very lean. And I wanted to do it vegan to prove to myself. So I documented a journey on YouTube called The Road to Vegan Shredded. And I started that pretty much this time last year, January the 1st, 2022. And I accomplished my goal. I got into the best ever shape of all my bodybuilding endeavors. I got to the strongest I'd ever been. I hit personal records in the gym. I maintained all my muscle mass. And now, a year later, as completely vegan, I'm fitter than I've ever been. I'm now taking Muay Thai boxing seriously, and I'm the fittest I've ever been for that. My performance is sky high. My strength is as best as ever been. I feel good. I look good. I'm performing good, and all my previous fears around being fully plant-based have been completely alleviated. So now my answer to that question is, I've done it with other people, but I've also done it myself with many different goals, not just fat loss, not just muscle building, but also strength, performance, fitness, cardio, etc.
That's great. I mean, it's awesome. We're gonna have to look at your YouTube videos and check it out. Do you have it linked on your website?
Yeah, I can send you the links. You just type in Road to Vegan Shredded RNT Fitness in YouTube. You can watch it. And it's a 5-part series where I discuss, it might be very relatable for people who aren't vegan, because I discuss the journey of going vegan. And I show from a nutritional perspective how I'm doing it, from a fitness perspective as well. And what I found is, and my conclusions around it all is, so long as you have sufficient protein, so long as you cover any sort of vitamin deficiencies, and so long as you continue to train with intensity, then you have no risk of losing muscle mass. And there's actually some interesting research that's come out now proving that there's no difference between an omnivorous diet and a plant-based diet when it comes to muscle mass gain, so long as protein and training intensity are matched. And that's the most important thing. So long as you're getting strong in the gym and you're training hard and you're meeting your protein intake, there are no differences in muscle mass gains, which I think is a huge piece of research that we didn't have 10 years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago. The fitness industry was built around eating as much meat as possible. Remember Arnold Schwarzenegger in a movie with Sylvester Stallone saying, "Oh, you punch like a vegetarian." So it was very much that culture of, if you want to build muscle, you eat lots of meat. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more data coming out proving that there are no differences. Whereas back then, there probably wasn't enough of a sample size or enough longitudinal data to prove that they are equal. So I think this is really encouraging for the plant-based movement, and I think it'll help encourage more and more people who are enthusiastic about their fitness and performance gains to take a plant-based approach with their diet.
That's great. So, there's some of the greatest athletes in the world right now are 100% plant-based. some people would say to me in that situation that, well, people like Tom Brady and, some of the greats, they have the finances to do and eat this way, whereas we, sort of maybe the average person does not, which, I think is an important thing to talk about, because as you know, most plant-based foods are actually quite inexpensive. A bag of beans, for instance, is $1.25 in the States, and I can feed, and that's 2 pounds of lentils, is about $3. And I can feed a family of 5 for 3 or 4 days if I wanted to, with that kind of food. So, remembering that sort of a lot of plant-based foods, especially the dried versions, are very affordable. One of the things, though, then, so if I were to ask you, what are your favorite plant-based foods to increase protein, or that are high in protein, rather, what would you say? Well, give me a couple of the suggestions.
Yeah, so just to bounce off your first point, I've reviewed our food bills pre and post going plant-based with my wife, and they're pretty much exactly the same. Even considering the cost of rising food prices and inflation, it's actually the same as what it used to be. So I had to no increase in budget accordingly. So that's really, really positive.
That's
Then
great.
with regards to protein options, my favorite are tofu, tempeh. I really like tempeh. I think it's a great source of protein. I love tofu. And then I really like edamame, soybeans. I use protein powders to help me just from a convenience perspective. But I used to use those before I went plant-based as well. It's not a new thing. And then I love beans, legumes, lentils as well. I'm not a big fan of using mock meats a lot. I know there tend to be popular substitutes for people wanting to experience being plant-based. I'd rather just save that for when I go out to eat every now and then, and I'll have something like the alternatives, but I don't have that on a day-to-day basis. My diet is very simple. It's protein powder and oats with some peanut butter, fruit, and dark chocolate. It's tofu, scramble, avocado, and toast, and then it's some form of tempeh, beans, lentils, edamame, spaghetti, with lots of vegetables and some rice, and that's pretty much the foundation of my diet that I really enjoy having on a day-to-day basis. And then every now and then I'll get experimental, but that's if my wife's up for it or not.
I like that. I mean, some people struggle with sort of the routine of eating the same foods more often, on a regular basis. My response always to that is to have a rotation similar to you. But having that rotation, I actually really think the predictability of those foods, because how they're going to make you feel too. I don't know. What I often will tell, is listen to your body, right? When you eat off of you eat your rotation of foods that you normally eat, your body feels good, your gut's good, your stool is normal, everything is good. And then you go off of that, right? And then you get acid reflux, you feel bloated, you feel uncomfortable. And so I think the most important thing is if you listen and see how your body reacts to the foods you're eating, it makes a huge difference in the choices you'll make. And so I like that. So I like that you brought up tempeh and tofu, soybeans, avocado, which are all sort of and beans. So, super important foods. I think that mock meats in general, I agree that shouldn't be eaten as a regular thing. Loaded in fat and often a lot of saturated fats, often very processed, a lot of coconut oil, all of which we are not in favor of in terms of heart disease risk as well. And so once in a while, nothing matters once in a while. And so I always tell people, don't sweat the small stuff, but on a regular basis, it should be beans, it should be tofu, tempeh, avocado, which is great. Do you eat a tofu scramble every day?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You really?
Tofu scramble with turmeric, paprika, salt. I think it's amazing. It tastes like just like scrambled eggs. If people are worried about dropping eggs, that's a really good substitute.
Yes, and you can add a little nutritional yeast to that too.
Oh yeah, that really thickens it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it thickens it up and adds that B12 component, which we all need. People often say, just as an aside, that, oh, well, one of the reasons we should not go plant-based is because there are nutrient deficiencies we will have, and one of those is B12. And one of the things I like to remind people, which is not as well known, is that actually most people nowadays are B12 deficient, meat eaters and vegetarians and vegans. And the reason is because B12 is made in the by bacteria in the soil, and because we use so many pesticides in our soil, and because there's many reasons for why the soil is deficient. There's not enough copper in the soil, cobalt in the soil. And so our bodies actually, in the ruminant animals like sheep and cow, that most people are getting their B12 from when they're meat eaters, they're unable to metabolize B12 and make B12 because the food there's a depletion of cobalt. And so because of that, now actually the animals that we eat, like our cow and our sheep, are now being injected with B12 so that they can then supply humans with B12. So most humans over time are becoming B12 deficient and are going to need a supplement. So nutritional yeast is a great way to get that B12. And there's no harm in also taking a supplement, which most of people have to do, including myself.
Yeah, likewise. I typically take a multivitamin. I take algae oil for my omega-3s. And then I take a vitamin D supplement as well. But that I take, again, regardless, just because I live in a place with very little sunlight.
Yes, and the truth is, even in Florida, people say sun all year, et cetera, which it is. But the truth is that most people are living inside most of the day, right? And so most people are going to be vitamin D deficient, unless you're spending 20-25 minutes in the sun on a daily basis. And with sunblocks now too, remember that's actually depleting our ability to absorb vitamin D. Always tricky. And so often people will need a vitamin D repletion. So I like what you said about how you use plant-based foods to keep your nutrition up. Do you feel like you're hungry every day? Do you feel in between meals you're hungry, which is another comment a lot of athletes will make?
Well, one of the things that I wrote about after my Road to Vegan Shredded was I found it was my easiest diet ever. And the reason why, I think, is because I was more plant-based. Because when you have a more plant-based diet, you naturally have more fiber. And after that adjustment period that some people experience, I actually was lucky. I didn't have any adjustment period with the fiber intake, but you feel really full because everything is very satiating. It's a lot of voluminous foods. And if you take a plant-based approach with or without meat, it's generally a very high volume, nutrient dense diet. And as a result, you don't feel hungry in between meals, and you can have big meals with very low calories. And I think it's a really good way to approach nutrition. So I personally don't feel hungry eating a plant-based diet. I wrote something at the end of my Road to Vegan Shredded where I was reviewing all the previous diets I've done to get to stage condition for bodybuilding. And one of the things I said was that this particular one was the easiest I've had. And one of the reasons why was because of a plant-based diet where it's naturally a lot more higher in volume in the food and the amount of food that you consume when matched for calories. And I think this is probably with or without meat. If you have a plant-based approach to your nutrition, it's going to be very high volume, nutrient dense, which you pack a lot of vitamins and minerals, but also you get a lot of fiber, and that keeps you full, satiated, and helps you manage your caloric intake on a day-to-day basis.
So you brought up the adjustment period, which I think is always an interesting topic. And so most people will have an adjustment period because their bodies aren't used to eating that much fiber. What are the symptoms that you describe as part of your adjustment period, or that people have?
Well, so luckily I didn't have much of an adjustment period because of the fact, if I look back at what my diet was pre-vegan and post-vegan, the only difference is instead of eggs, I had tofu, and instead of chicken in my evening meal, I had I put tempeh and beans in. So there's probably a slight increase, but I was already coming from a good foundation. But what I've seen in others where they start feeling, they may feel bloated, they may feel like their stool quality changes a bit. But after a few weeks, you tend to normalize and sort of feel back to normal again. And if you do find it, too much to go plant-based overnight, then a transition approach is more than fine. Ultimately, we're trying to eat less meat and fish and consume less dairy in the world. It doesn't need to be done overnight, but you can do it over time. I took that approach myself, so you can do it over time, and that does reap the same benefits over in the long term.
Yes, absolutely. I think the adjustment period, I always tell people that for about 2 weeks, you're going to hate me, because you're going to just have to laugh a lot, make a lot of jokes about the gas and the bloating. But that is part of the process, because a thing to remember is that as you're changing and eating more fiber, well, people say, well, fiber doesn't agree with me. No, that's not actually true. It's just that the gut bugs that you have, they actually need to change. So you have to kind of go through the process of the bloating and the fullness and uneasiness and the gas, because that is healthy. That's actually your body changing over to those healthy gut bugs. And it does take about 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, you're a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit embarrassed about your maybe gas situation. But after that, your body changes and you can handle it, and you'll be fine. And I think that should reassure people that, and then not to be afraid of the fiber then, because sometimes you do feel like it doesn't quote unquote agree with you. Well, it does. It's just you have to kind of maybe a more gradual approach, build it up slowly. There is no shame in going slow. There are a lot of people in that think that you can either be this or this only. You're either in or you're out. You're either vegan or you're not. And I don't believe that. I really do believe that there is a gray area, and that people get to where you have to start where people are and try to get them to be where, yes, absolutely more plant forward, as many plants as we can get in them. But there's no judgment, and there shouldn't be judgment in this world. We should just all be working towards this common goal of eating more plants.
It's like my wife, for example. She's not completely plant-based. She's about probably 95% of the way there. We don't buy any meat or fish in the house. We stopped buying dairy. But so she'll be predominantly plant-based at home. But then if she's out, she may have a bit of meat, she may have a bit of fish, but we're probably looking at less than 5%. And compare that to a year ago, she's like significantly eating more plants. And she said to me, like, it's a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. But for everyone has their own process and time, and it just needs to have that click when it's like, actually, this doesn't make sense for me anymore. So she's a great example of someone who isn't all the way, but she's made such a drastic change where most of the benefits are already there.
It's awesome. It's awesome. So I know we've been chatting for a while, but I have just a few last questions I thought I'd ask you. And so one of the other things that people describe as an area of difficulty in fitness is the amount of time that it takes to do the fitness work. Like, I just don't have time. And that's always something that's a challenge. I just don't have time. Where will I get the time to walk? I'm working 8 hours, I'm working 12 hours. How do I get that time in? And so what kind of tips do you give people to sort of get that fitness in, especially people who want to build a little bit of muscle? And then the second thing to that would be, there are some people that focus so much on muscle building that they forget about cardio. And so how do you kind of work those things out?
Yeah, so when it comes to time, I think we grossly overestimate how much we actually need to do. So I think you can get a lot of results from less than 3 hours a week, even 2.5 hours a week of training. 3 days a week of 30 to 45 minutes of very focused, progressive training can go a long, long way with building your physique. If you couple training hard, which is very, very important, I think it's important for anyone to know that without training intensity and without progressively getting stronger with good form, it's going to be impossible to build muscle mass regardless of diet. Yes, you need a small calorie surplus, but eating a small calorie surplus and not training hard, the only thing you're going to do is be gaining body fat. You're not going to be building any muscle. So you do need that combination. And I think the combination doesn't need to be 6 days a week for 2 hours a day. Like, that's not what you need to build muscle. 3 days a week, 45 minutes is a really good place to start. I typically recommend people to train first thing in the morning if they can, just because it gets out of the way. For us both, you can imagine once you get going with the day, it's meetings, it's podcasts, it's working with clients. calls. It's really hard to pull yourself out of the day. And then in the evening, it's family, socials, etc. So the longer you leave it in the day, the more at risk it's going to be like, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. Next thing you know, it's bedtime. So I think getting it done first thing, just locking it in the diary, and then making it really easy for yourself, such as putting your gym clothes by your bed, putting your shoes by the door, whatever you can to gamify the process to make things easier, is going to make a big difference. So then ultimately, you've got to honor your commitments. Life is always going to get in the way. You are going to be busy. But if you really want to do this, you'll find a way. And I think you've got to take a sense of ownership and responsibility and self-accountability for your journey in order to make the training happen. And then with regards to your second question, muscle mass and cardio, I think cardio is useful for people to keep in year round. I think no matter if you're chasing aggressive muscle building goals or you just want a healthy lifestyle solution where you stay in shape, there's so many benefits to cardio from a cardiovascular perspective, from a fitness perspective. And you'll find that if you only focus on weight training and building and gaining weight to build muscle, you start becoming unfit and you start walking around, you're out of breath, you can't tie your shoelaces properly, your knees start hurting. So you don't want to get sloppy with your training. And I think cardio can be a good way to keep yourself in check from a health perspective and a fitness perspective when you're pursuing those aggressive muscle building goals.
That's great. Akash, you're amazing. I really like what you're doing. Tell me a little bit, like, how would you tell everybody about the name of your book again, so that we know, and again, the name of your YouTube video, so they have that. And then I want to finish up with you maybe giving us some empowering words. Like, how do you motivate people in January when it's cold? How do you get people who are a little bit down, a little bit in a funk? How do you get them out of that? What are some of the things you'd say to inspire our listeners to make the change, take health and specifically fitness and nutrition as an important part of their life?
Sure. So first off, thanks for having me on this podcast. I appreciate the opportunity. My book is called Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life, and you can purchase this on Amazon. The YouTube video series is called Road to Vegan Shredded. So you can just type in Road to Vegan Shredded RNC Fitness, and you can watch that. And there's also a cool quiz that people can try to see if they're ready for a body transformation, where they can go to www.rncfitness.co.uk/transform. And
we'll put all this into the
5-minute quiz where people can take and understand their readiness to transform.
Oh, nice.
And then to finish up with regards to starting this year, January is a great time to start your fitness goals. And people often mock, the January gym club. And I think it's a great opportunity though, because if you take advantage of this motivation that you may have at the start of the year and you build some of that initial momentum, you can find it can take you through the whole year if you get it right. And the next thing you know, you're someone who's just identifies as being in shape. So I think it's worth capitalizing on the new year, new you excitement. What I like to think of is the new year doesn't make you a new you. You're going to have to take new actions that are going to make you a new you. And I think this time of year is always a good opportunity to think about, where do you want to be a year from now, January 2024? And will you be content being exactly the same person as you are now, in the exact same body, health, fitness as you are now? And if not, if you're not content with that and you're not content with what you see in the mirror, then you have to take that first step. But the first step is the hardest step to take. But once you take that first step and you start building wins together, you start stacking wins, you start developing a level of confidence and momentum that starts taking on a life of its own. And the next thing you know, you're dropping pounds, you're healthier, you're fitter, and you become someone who identifies as a healthy, fit person. Then you don't need to worry about dieting again, because you're just someone who stays in good shape year round.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you're doing this program in a remote way. So you're able to reach people in all these different countries. Do you find that people, what kind of impediments have you felt with that? Or people really seem to be responding? Tell me about that. Or most of your clients in London, or most of your clients actually more remote?
So we're about 60% in the UK. Everything is remote. Everything we do is remote. About 60% in the UK, which is probably because I'm in the UK. We used to be about 80%. And I'd say 30% is actually now in the US. So we're growing in the US each month. And I think in December we had more coming from the US than in the UK, which was really cool. So the US is our second biggest market, and then it's probably scattered around sort of East Africa, Australia, and different parts of the Middle East. But our two big markets are UK and US. And we've had, in terms of the impediments, once you know, sometimes it can be a bit of a foreign thing for those who are used to the typical personal trainer in the gym. But once they see the results that we've produced and the track record speaks for itself, then, you know, you can see that we're onto something.
That's amazing. I love what you're doing, Akash. Thank you so much for being here and telling us about what you're doing. And I really just like, as somebody who's so nutrition focused, and I do a lot of fitness of my own, but I do work with my patients on it. I do like talking to people who focus more on the fitness side, because I think it helps me understand different perspectives. And I think it helps people kind of say, okay, well, my goals are different. I'm not interested in my cardiovascular health, which is what Monica Agarwal's interested in. I just want to be fit and strong and healthy. And then it really sort of helps kind of people see that, yes, you can do it plant-based. Yes, you can do it at home. Yes, you can do it with a with financially, it's not an impediment, and that there's so many options, like somebody like you who may not live in your backyard, that you have to go to their house, you have to drive to their studio every day, but you can do it remotely and still make a real huge impact. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for what you're doing and for being on this show with me and telling me about what you do.
Thank you very much.